My name is Dale Grayson, 57 years old, and for 16 years I was the man everyone called the difficult one at the cottage, while my name was on every single lease. This past Victoria Day weekend, I didn't drive up to Muskoka. I didn't put a single dollar toward any of it. I just sat on my back deck in Barrie and watched my phone light up like a fire. I had nothing left to tend. I never expected what came after. Before I take you back there, do me one small favor. Hit like, subscribe, and drop a comment telling me where you're watching from and what time it is. It helps more than you know. Now let me take you back to April and the planning meeting that started everything unraveling. It was a Thursday night at my daughter's house in Oakville. She had a printed agenda. My daughter always had a printed agenda. She stood at the head of her kitchen island like she was chairing a board meeting, and she assigned roles the way she assigns everything, like she'd already decided and was just informing us. My son-in-law would drive the truck and haul the gear. His cousin would bring the kayaks. My sister would bring the Caesar mix she always brought. Then she got to me. "Dad, you don't need to worry about logistics this year," my daughter said. She gave me the smile she uses when she wants to seem generous in front of people. "Just pack light and try not to get into it with Travis like last summer." My son-in-law laughed. Short, easy, like it cost him nothing. I sat in the chair by the sliding door, the one nobody else takes because the draft comes under it in spring, and I nodded. "I'll be there," I said. I didn't say the rest. I never said the rest, because 40 minutes before anyone else had arrived, I'd already e-transferred the deposit to Lakewood Property Management. $1,400. The same cottage on 3 Mile Lake, same long weekend, same as every Victoria Day for 16 years. Nobody asked who paid the deposit. That was the part nobody ever asked. I drove home with the confirmation email sitting in my inbox. The man who gets into it with Travis. That's what I'd become, somewhere along the way. It started small. It always starts small. 4 years back, I offered to do the grocery run for the weekend. My daughter had sent a list. I bought everything on it and added a bag of charcoal because I could see we were running low. When the charcoal didn't fit the cottage's grill, the story by dinner had already changed. Dad bought the wrong kind again. I specifically said propane. She hadn't mentioned propane anywhere on the list. The cousins laughed and I let it go. 3 years back, I told a story after supper about a winter pipeline job I'd worked outside Fort McMurray. Long story maybe, the kind that takes a minute to get to the point. My son-in-law refilled his drink in the middle of it, came back, said, "What I missed." My daughter touched my arm. "Okay, Dad, let's clean up." The table moved on without me. Last summer I still can't tell you what I did wrong. A wrong word, a wrong look. By breakfast the next day it was settled fact. I'd made things awkward again. Here's the part that took me 16 years to see. Every single time I ruined something, there would be a phone call 2 or 3 days later. Gentle, almost apologetic. "Dad, since the weekend got a bit tense, would you mind covering the catering deposit? Just to smooth things over." And I always did. Because being the one who fixed it felt better than being the one who broke it. I never once connected those two things. The blame at the cottage, the bill on Tuesday. Year after year, the same rhythm, and I danced to it without ever hearing the music. My wife Kathleen passed away 12 years ago. My daughter was 23, my son was 17. The house went so quiet, I thought it might stay that way. So I did what I knew how to do. I kept the traditions going. Kathleen had loved the cottage weekends. We'd done them since before the kids were born, trying different places until we found 3 Mile Lake and kept going back. As long as I kept booking it, as long as the family kept coming, I could tell myself we were still a family. That was the deal I made with myself. Keep paying for the gathering, and you keep the people. Nobody told me that wasn't how it worked. 2 weeks before that April planning night, I'd been at my family doctor's office. He showed me some blood work and used the word elevated in a way that meant he was paying attention to it. He told me to watch my stress, cut back on salt. "What's weighing on you, Dale?" he asked, pen in hand. I didn't tell him about the printed agenda. I didn't tell him that my pension from the pipefitters union covers my needs and not much past them, and that every May I quietly stretched past them. The cottage rental, the catering trays from that deli in Gravenhurst, the boat rental from the marina. The grocery run I always did, because coordinating 7 people's food preferences was easier done than organized. I told him I was fine. He didn't look convinced. Then at that same planning dinner, my daughter mentioned, light as anything, that Travis had a contact for a financial advisor, and maybe my son should look into reorganizing his savings. My son is 29, runs heavy equipment, saves in a TFSA he set up himself. They'd nudged him about money before. Something cold settled in my chest, right where my doctor said to watch it. If I didn't change something now, I never would. A man needs to know where his line is. I just hadn't found mine yet. There's something about being the quiet one. People stop watching what your hands are doing. Around the third or fourth year, my daughter had said, "Dad, can you just manage the booking? You're good at that stuff." And I was, so I did. The cottage rental, the catering order, the boat from the marina 2 bays over, the grocery delivery I'd started using because it was simpler. One by one, I'd put everything on my card because it was less hassle than chasing contributions that never came. What none of them ever noticed was whose name sat on every single contract. Not my daughter's, not my son-in-law's, mine. Dale Grayson on the rental agreement, Dale Grayson on the catering invoice, Dale Grayson as the primary contact at the marina. To everyone at that table, the long weekend simply appeared. The cottage was always booked, the food was always there, the boat was always tied to the dock. Magic, more or less. My daughter posted the photos, organized who was sleeping where, and everyone told her what a great organizer she was. And I let it happen, because what father doesn't want his daughter to shine? I sat at my kitchen table that night in April and pulled up every account I hadn't really looked at properly in years. Vendor after vendor. Lakewood Property Management, the deli in Gravenhurst, Muskoka Marina Rentals, all flowing out of one account, mine. I went back through 16 years of statements. Then I did the calculation that actually mattered. Not the money, the other thing. In 16 years of paying for that weekend, how many times did I feel like a father at that cottage rather than a service provider everyone tolerated? I sat with that for a long time. Not once, I couldn't think of one. So I decided. I wasn't going to make a scene. That's not who I am, and it's not how you handle something like this. I was simply going to stop. But I'd do it the right way. I'd warn my daughter first, and I would not leave a vendor holding my mess. Monday morning I made the calls, calm ones. Lakewood Property Management first. A woman named Linda answered, friendly, clearly knew the account well. "Mr. Grayson, you've been with us a long time," she said. "The 3 Mile Lake property, every Victoria Day weekend." "That's right," I said. "I'm calling to cancel my reservation and remove my payment information going forward. My daughter is the one who actually runs the weekend. If she wants to keep the booking, she can call and set up her own account. She just needs to put her own card on file and cover the deposit herself." A longer pause. "Just to confirm, every year, the booking and payment have come through your account?" "Every year," I said, "but not this one." I made the same call to the deli in Gravenhurst, to the marina, to the grocery delivery service. Same words more or less. Cancel my account. If my daughter wants to keep the order, she can set it up in her own name. I'm not canceling out of spite. Every vendor knows exactly how to keep things going. She just needs to put her own name on the bottom of the page. It took less than 2 hours. 16 years of arrangements, undone before my second coffee. When I hung up the last call, Linda said something that stayed with me. "Mr. Grayson, is everything all right?" I told her it was. Finally. My son came by that Tuesday after his shift, still in his work clothes, that diesel smell that never quite washes out. He stopped in the doorway and looked at me. "Something's different," he said. So I told him. The back deck, his brother-in-law's voice, his sister's laugh, the contracts, the calls, all of it straight. My son sat down at my kitchen table and put his face in his hands for a moment. When he looked up, his eyes were wet. "Dad, I've tried to say something about this for years. Every time, she shuts me down before I get 2 words out." "You were one voice against a room," I told him. "That's a hard place to stand." "It's not right what they did." He shook his head. "But she's still your daughter." "She is." I let that sit, and I helped make her this way. I paid for every problem until she stopped seeing problems as problems. That's partly on me too. My son wiped his face with the back of his hand. "What do you need from me?" "Nothing loud," I said. "I'm not asking you to fight anyone. I just need you to tell the truth if anyone asks you straight." He looked at me for a long moment. Then he nodded, slow and certain, the way his grandfather used to nod when something was completely decided. "If someone asks me straight," he said, "I'll tell them exactly what I've seen. My daughter called Wednesday evening. Breezy. the way she always opened calls. Hi Dad, quick thing. Linda from Lakewood left me a voicemail about the reservation, and the deli isn't seeing our order either. Can you sort that out like usual? I can't this year, I said. A small laugh. She thought she'd misheard. It's just 2 calls, Dad. I mean, I won't be coming up to the cottage this year, I said, and I've reorganized my own expenses. Going forward, whoever's hosting the weekend pays for it. The booking's been in my name and on my card for 16 years. I've canceled my accounts with all of them. If you want to keep the long weekend, you'll need to set it up yourself in your name, with your card. The line went very quiet. Dad, you can't just do this. The kids are expecting it. This is because of something Travis said, isn't it? You're going to wreck everyone's long weekend over your feelings? I kept my voice level, the way you do on a job site when someone's panicking and you're not. The vendors all have your number now, I said. I'd call Linda tomorrow. May long weekend books up fast. Dad, this is... I told her good night, and I meant it kindly. By Thursday, she'd called in everyone she could reach. My phone filled up. Cousins I hadn't heard from since the previous summer, family friends who just wanted to check in, all of them wearing the same message. This isn't like you, Dale. Don't let pride wreck things for the grandkids. Think about everyone else. One cousin came right out with it. Used the word selfish at your age over money. I read every message from my recliner and felt the old things start crawling up my spine. The guilt. 16 years of it knows exactly where you live. For about an hour I nearly folded. I thought, just pay it, Dale. Keep the peace. It's one weekend. It's family. That was the voice that had cost me 16 years. Soft and reasonable, wearing the face of love. My thumb was already on my daughter's name in my contacts when my phone buzzed with one message from my sister. I know what's happening, and I've watched it for years, without saying enough. Don't you dare fold now. I'm with you. My sister doesn't say things she doesn't mean. When she says she's with you, she means all the way down. I read it twice, set the phone in my lap. My hands were shaking slightly. I'm not a man who shakes, but they were. I sat in the quiet of my own house and let the phone ring itself out. There's a strange feeling to choosing yourself for the first time at 57. My son-in-law didn't call. He showed up Friday night. Headlights in the driveway, then his fist on the door, heavier than it needed to be. He filled the doorframe. That closing the deal energy turned hard. You're putting Paige in an impossible position 2 weeks before the long weekend. Everyone has booked time off. You don't just pull this out from under people because your feelings got hurt. What commitment did I make exactly? I asked. That stopped him for a second. You always pay. Everyone knows that. Everyone assumed that, I said. That's different. His face went red. You're really going to do this? The contracts have your name because you put them there. That doesn't mean you get to blow everything up. I thought about telling him I'd heard him on his back deck. We'd have a better time without him. I decided he didn't get to know that yet. Whoever's name is on the contract pays it, I said. That's how it works in the trades and everywhere else. You just never had to read them. He stepped closer. Paige carries this whole weekend. Then she can carry the bill, I said quietly. He stared at me like he didn't recognize the furniture talking back. I walked to the door and opened it. The cool May evening came in. Drive safe, I said. He left. There was nothing left to say to a man who'd finally run out of leverage. I'll borrow my son's eyes for what happened next. My daughter drove to the Lakewood Property Management office, certain it would be a 5-minute formality. Linda sat her down and slid a new rental agreement across the desk, with a fresh quote attached. Since this was a new account, they'd need a card on file and a full deposit to hold the Victoria Day weekend. My son said he watched his sister's face do something he'd never seen it do before. The color just left it. Her eyes moved down the quote, line by line. The cottage for the long weekend, the boat rental package, the optional catering. Numbers she had never in her life had to look at. And then Linda, trying to be helpful, turned her screen slightly so my daughter could see the account history. Going back 16 years, paid in full, Dale Grayson, Dale Grayson, Dale Grayson. She just sat there, Dad, my son told me, staring at that screen like the floor moved. My daughter finally asked Linda one question. He paid for all of it, every single year? And Linda said, yes, ma'am, every year, always the same account. She had never known those numbers, because she had never once had to see them. What did my daughter do, facing an invoice she couldn't cover 2 weeks before the May 24? She turned to the next person she could reach. My son. She called him that same afternoon, and he put it on speaker right there at my kitchen table. Mason, I need you to float me some money, just till June. Dad has completely lost his mind, and I'm left holding all of this. My son looked at me. I didn't say a word. This was his line to draw, not mine. How much? He asked. She named a number, a significant one, for a man who saves carefully. No, my son said. Silence on the line. What? I said no, I'm not paying for the cottage, the same as Dad. Are you serious right now? After everything? After everything what? His voice stayed steady, but I heard the years in it. After you spent the last decade, letting people talk about Dad like he was the family problem? A pause. I never said anything about Dad. And here's where my son surprised me. You texted me 2 summers ago, he said. You called him an embarrassment the whole family had to manage around. I still have it. I felt that one in my chest, not anger. An old ache confirmed. Delete that, my daughter said. Her voice had gone smaller. I'm not going to use it against you. That's not how Dad handles things, and it's not how I want to handle things either. I just needed you to know I remember. A beat. I'm deleting it after this call. I've held on to it too long. He hung up, and right there at my table, I watched him open the thread and delete the message. He looked at me, almost apologetic. She sent it once, a long time ago. I should have let it go sooner. He set the phone down. We're not going to win anything by throwing her own words at her. We only mean something here if we're the people she said we weren't. I told him I understood. I understood completely. Let me step out of the story for just a moment, because I think some of you know exactly where I'm sitting. Maybe you're the one who quietly holds your family together, the one who pays, who organizes, who smooths it over, and gets treated like it's simply air. If that's you, tell me in the comments where you finally drew your line. I read everyone. And if you want to know what happened at 4:30 on the Saturday of the long weekend, stay with me. The part that changed everything is still coming. Hit like and subscribe so I know you're walking through this with me. The last few days before Victoria Day were the loudest quiet I'd had in years. My daughter called. I let it ring. My son-in-law called. Let it ring. I let them all ring. It wasn't cruelty. I'd said what I had to say, clearly and without raising my voice. There was nothing left to negotiate. For the first time in 16 long weekends, I stayed home. I cleaned my place, put the good chairs out on the back deck, bought a pork roast because it was going to be just me and my son, and we'd cook it the way his grandfather taught us both. My sister called once, and that one I answered. You holding up, she asked. Better than I expected, I said, and I meant it. They scrambled, she said. Found a place up near Huntsville, smaller, further from the water. Paige is telling everyone it was always the plan, that she wanted to try something new. A pause. She told her cousin, you'll drive up Saturday morning and quietly transfer her the whole thing. She said you always do. Not this year, I said. That's what I told her. A beat. Kathleen would have done this 12 years ago, you know. That got me. She would have. Victoria Day, Saturday morning, I sat on my deck and watched the neighborhood empty out. That's what you do on the May 24 in Ontario. Everybody goes to the lake. The long weekend exists for exactly that. Somewhere up near Huntsville, my family was hosting a long weekend I had nothing to do with for the first time in 16 years. At 4:30 in the afternoon, my phone lit up. I'll borrow my son's account here. He'd driven up for the weekend at my request. I wanted one honest person in that group. The place my daughter had found last minute was smaller than 3 Mile Lake. The cousins noticed. The couple from across the cul-de-sac. The same neighbors who'd stood on my son-in-law's deck and heard him say what he'd said were there too, because my daughter had invited them this year, wanting witnesses to a good time. What she got was different. The catering order hadn't come together. Once she'd seen the real cost, she'd told everyone she was keeping things casual this year. Casual meant a grocery run that fell short for the number of people. By Saturday afternoon, the mood had shifted in that particular way it does, when people expected one thing and got quietly delivered another. My son said my empty chair was noticed. People asked where I was. My daughter kept saying I wasn't feeling well, with a brightness that wore thinner each time. At 4:30 Saturday afternoon, the marina called my son-in-law about a boat rental that hadn't been paid in full. He tried to book locally, unfamiliar with the rates. He hadn't known I'd built up a decade of loyalty pricing with the other marina. When the card came up short for the balance, he had to let the boat go. At the same time, the deli in town was calling my daughter about an invoice she'd started and not completed. Then my sister called me. She was there. She'd driven up with the cousins. Her voice was quiet, but I could hear the party sounds behind her gone strange. "You need to come up here, Dale. I've already said everything I have to say. This isn't about money." A pause. "Something is happening that you should be in the room for, not to fight anything. To be seen." Her voice dropped slightly. "You earned the right to be there. Don't give it away by sitting in your backyard." I looked at my jacket on the hook by the door. "You're not coming to pay," she said, reading my silence the way only a sister can after 60 years. "You're coming to be present. There's a difference." I picked up my keys. I drove up the 400 with no wallet in my jacket pocket. I want you to know that. I'd left it on the kitchen counter on purpose. For the first time in 16 years, I was bringing nothing but myself. I parked on the gravel and walked up to the cottage. I could hear the music through the trees, see the lights on inside. I opened the door. The room shifted. It is a strange thing, walking into a long weekend that your money built, where you've always been the one tolerated at the edge of things, and watching the room go quiet because you've arrived. My daughter was near the kitchen counter, and she was not easy anymore. She was pale. She saw me, and something moved across her face that looked almost like relief. Like the person who was supposed to fix everything had finally shown up. "Dad." She stepped toward me, voice pitched for the room. "Thank God. Just tell them there's been a misunderstanding. Tell them you'll." She caught herself, looked at the neighbors standing near the sliding door, the same neighbors. "There's no misunderstanding," I said, quiet, not loud. "Everything is exactly what it looks like." "Dad, you're doing it again." Her voice climbed toward the old script, the one she'd been running for 16 years. "You always find a way to make things about you. You ruin it every time." There it was, 20 years of it said out loud in a full room. I didn't raise my voice. "I found you rarely need to." "I haven't done anything," I said. "I just stopped paying for a weekend where I was always the one who didn't quite belong." The room went still. My sister spoke from somewhere behind me. She wasn't making a scene. She was just saying what was true, the way she does without decoration. "I've watched this for 16 years, she said. "Every May, same story. Dale made things uncomfortable. Dale ruined it. Dale was the problem." She looked at my daughter. "But here's what nobody in this room has ever had to think about. Every time you drove up that highway for this weekend, every time you walked into a cottage that was booked and stocked and had a boat at the dock, that was your father. Every single time." Nobody spoke. My son stepped out from near the back of the room. He was in his work jacket, still had the mark from his hard hat on his forehead. He didn't raise his voice either. He learned that from me, I suppose. "I want to say something," he said, "since we're all here." He looked around the room, steady and unhurried. "For years, the story in this family was the same. Dad's difficult. Dad makes things awkward. Dad's the reason the long weekend never quite works." He let that sit. I heard it so many times I almost stopped questioning it. But here's what nobody mentioned. The man who supposedly made things difficult was also the only reason any of us had anywhere to go. He paid for all of it, every cottage, every year, the food you ate, the boat you took out last summer, the weekend you all had booked off work. My son's voice caught slightly, and we let him sit by the door and called him the problem. A couple of people looked at the floor. One of the cousins who'd texted me the word selfish set her drink down on the counter and didn't pick it up again. The neighbors looked at my son-in-law, who had told them on his back deck that things would be better without the old man. I watched his face. The easy, in-control look he'd walked in with slid right off him as the people he'd been performing for understood what they'd just been told. I spoke because some things a father has to say himself. "I'm not here to embarrass anyone," I said. I looked at the room, cousins, family, neighbors, people I'd been housing and feeding on a lake for 16 years without any of them knowing it was me. I kept this weekend going because Kathleen loved it, and after she was gone, keeping it felt like keeping something of her. For a long time, that was reason enough. The grief moved through me, quiet and familiar. But somewhere along the way, I started believing the only way to keep my family was to pay for them. And once you believe that, people will let you. I looked at my daughter, not with anger, just finished. I'm not angry with you, I'm just done buying a seat at a table where I was always the one who didn't quite fit. I turned toward the door. From here on, whoever hosts pays for it, that's only fair. And me, I'll come if I'm wanted as a father, not as a budget. I walked out into the May night. The air smelled like pine and lake water. The sky up north in late May has that deep blue that isn't quite dark yet, and the tree line was sharp against it. Nobody stopped me. I drove home lighter than I'd felt in years. The weekend broke up a day early, my son told me over the following days. The air had gone out of the place, the way it does when people realize at the same time what had been holding a room together. The neighbors made quiet excuses. The cousins drifted out. My daughter drove home Sunday morning. By June, the story going around the extended family was no longer Dale made things weird again. It was something closer to the truth. The cousin who'd texted me the word selfish called to apologize. She didn't quite get all the way there, but she tried and I let her. I'm not in the business of collecting shame debts. I'd had enough of debts. My son-in-law went quiet. The neighbors he'd performed for on that back deck were the same people he'd been hoping to impress for years. That sentence, "We'd have a better time without him," had cost him more than he'd expected. That Victoria Day evening I ate pork roast at my own kitchen table with my son and his girlfriend, a kind woman who asked about my years in the trades like she was genuinely curious. My sister drove down from Collingwood and took over my kitchen the way she does whenever she arrives, which felt exactly right. It was the best long weekend I could remember. A week after the holiday, my daughter called, not breezy, just tired. "Can I come over, just me?" She came alone, sat at my kitchen table, the same table where I'd added it all up, and for a while didn't say much. "I looked at the invoices," she finally said. "Linda from Lakewood sent me the full account history when I asked." "I went through all of it, Dad. I didn't know. I know how that sounds. But I swear I never actually sat down and looked at those numbers. It was always just handled. You always handled it." "I made it easy not to know," I said. She turned her mug in her hands. "Travis is furious. Not about the weekend, about what the neighbors think of him now." A short, dry sound. "Says I embarrassed him." I let that sit without comment. "I don't know how to do any of this," she said, and her voice cracked a little. "I'm 35 and I've never thrown a party I actually paid for myself. You always—" She stopped, started again. "I'm sorry, that's what I came here to say. I didn't come to ask for anything. I just owed you that, and I'm done putting it off." She looked at me then, straight. "Thank you, Dad, for all of it, all 16 years. I never once said it, and I'm sorry it took losing it to see you." No clipboard, no ask behind it, no balance due. Just my daughter. I'd waited a long time to hear that, longer than I'd ever let myself admit. "I forgive you," I said, and I meant it fully, without conditions. Not because she'd given me a perfect apology, but because carrying the weight of not forgiving her was heavier than setting it down, and I was done carrying things that weren't mine. She cried a little. I put my arm around my daughter, and for the first time in 16 years, it didn't cost me a thing. Here's what I know now that I wish I'd known at 45. You cannot pay your way into being valued. You can only pay your way into being used. The two feel similar from the inside for a very long time, and then one day you do the math in a dark kitchen, and they don't feel similar at all. The day I stopped paying for the long weekend was the first day I actually showed up for myself. I keep that now. I earned it. The following May long weekend, there was no rented cottage. There was my backyard in Barrie, cleaned up and strung with lights, with the good folding table out, and enough food for everyone who showed up for the right reasons. My son came and his girlfriend, who fits into a quiet afternoon like she's always been part of one. My sister came early and stayed late. My daughter came with her kids and without a clipboard, carrying a potato salad she'd made herself, the recipe having taken her 3 tries to get right. She was proud of it. I was proud of her right back. Things weren't repaired all at once. You don't undo 16 years over one evening in a backyard. There was care between us, the kind that comes after something heals but still knows where it was broken. But that was okay. Careful is honest. Careful means you mean it. Late, after the kids had crashed inside, and my son was washing dishes he'd insisted on washing, My daughter came and stood beside me at the edge of the deck. We looked out at the yard in the dark. "I'm going to keep getting this right," she said quietly. "I'm not promising I already have, but I'm going to keep trying." "That's all any of us can do," I told her. She leaned her head against my shoulder for just a moment. Small thing, 16 years in the making. For the first time, the long weekend cost me nothing, and it was worth more than every dollar I'd ever spent on all the others put together.